So before we tread any further, so what exactly are we going to see in today's webinar? So the first thing we will see is the overview of server monitoring, or what are the basics of server monitoring. Just why do you need to monitor your servers? Basically, servers comprise the backbone of any application infrastructure that you might have in your IT. So monitoring ideally should begin from the grassroots level, that is the server and virtual machine level that host all your other business applications. And we will also have a glimpse of the recent enhancements we have made on the virtual machine monitoring module with the release of Oracle Virtual Machine, as well as the KVM kernel-based virtual machine infrastructures. And the third part of the agenda will explore why it is important not just to monitor the server metrics, but why it is equally important to take care of your hardware metrics as well. They might not be as frequent as the server problems, but as and when they occur, they can cause catastrophic losses to your business. So just why it is important to monitor your hardware. And finally, planning your resource with the necessary insights so as to stay vigilant and precautious to any impending problems you might be facing. So just what are the insights you will need to determine what kind of resource planning strategy you need to implement in your IT infrastructure. So let's go on to the first topic that we saw here on the agenda, that is the value of monitoring the operational status of your server. So when we talk about servers, what are the primary metrics that we should be focusing on? So what I have done here is I have split them into the following 7 key components that an IT admin needs to focus when we are talking about monitoring your servers. So the CPU, memory, disk utilization are right at the basics. So what we need is clear information about which application or which service is consuming more CPU or more memory. And this will give us some really valuable information as to the load handled by any individual server. The network information will help us determine if the problem is on the network aspect, on the network adapter, the network connectivity problems, or if the problem persists on the server side. So it basically gives us a layer of transparency to determine wherein the problem exactly lies. And then processes, your servers might be running different services and processes, and visibility into these tasks, these processes, these services are just as important as any other parameter. And hardware, as I mentioned previously, the hardware that includes the components such as the temperature of your CPU or the fan speed. These are small but significant components that also need to be checked on from time to time. And finally, the overall health and availability of your server, which is what will help us understand if all of the underlying parameters are functioning as expected. So let us look at the parameters that I just was referring to. So when we're talking about servers within CPU, we have details such as the utilization of the individual CPU cores, which is important, the memory usage of your server, and this includes not just the memory utilization segregated based upon the free memory, the swap memory, and the physical memory as well. The hard disk usage. Now this detail can allow you to understand which particular drive is using more space and whether it deserves to use that much space, and should you reallocate your resources to different drives in order to maintain uninterrupted business continuity. And server reports. Now since we're talking about servers, besides these parameters, it is also important that you check on these parameters, the performance of these parameters over a course of time, to understand how well they have been performing and how likely they are to perform in the future. So analytical information about the performance is also important besides monitoring the details in real time. Now let's just take a quick look at some of these metrics for virtual servers as well, and then we'll go to the product and see these metrics in real time and how they look in the UI. So within virtual servers, we have quite a lot of virtual servers supported, which is the VMware ESXi and ESX servers, the Hyper-V by Microsoft, Citrix virtual machines, that is the Zen server, and we introduced quite recently the kernel-based virtual machines, the Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, as well as the Oracle VMs. And when we're talking about performance metrics, similar to the servers, we have here the CPU utilization time, the network details, the hardware details, the disk and data store details for each of the virtual machines that you have in your server. And then in case of events, we have the virtual machine connections, the virtual machine status basically of your individual instances of virtual machine, how many hosts are there and how many hosts are hosting how many virtual machines, details pertaining to these will be collected for the virtual machines. And then again, as we saw reports for servers, the similar reports also exist for virtual machines, wherein we see the status of the utilized virtual machine. I mean, how much of the virtual machine is used, how much is idle, if a particular instance is overused, should we need to cut down allocating resources to that instance and probably redistribute it to other resources. Information such as that can be really valuable when you're planning capacity for the future. So that is the importance that the reports module can offer to users. So besides these critical parameters that we should take care of, there are also processes that I was mentioning. So the servers might have quite a few processes. Let us take a simple example of a Windows server, for example, and the processes that run underlying these Windows server. So time and again, the blockage of a single process can in some way act as a deterrent for other processes to execute, and these need to be constantly checked upon. And similarly, besides processes, Windows services or services running on any of your servers, these can also be really important in the processing of certain critical business operations, business activities. So for example, imagine if a service goes down and all of the related services or applications go down. So the level of visibility that we need here from an administrative perspective is to understand the functioning, the response time of execution of each of these services, the status of these services, and based upon the criticality of this service to our business operation, one has to be proactive and monitor these in real time. Besides services, the one final aspect I would like to touch upon before moving into the product UI is the event logs feature. Now, when we're talking about Windows servers, especially, it behoves us to capture the logs as well in order to understand the activities that are happening, processes that are happening on our Windows server, and to understand how often or how frequent a particular change or activity can impact our business or potential interactions or business transactions for that case. So from the security and audit intelligence perspective, it kind of adds real value if you have your event logs in place along with your Windows server monitoring. So how we see it is the monitoring allows you to deliver the business services, while the event logs, the analysis of the event logs kind of allows you to keep track on these changes that might happen on your Windows server by users in your own organization. For example, one example cited here is the failed account log on, the event ID 4625. For example, if you keep seeing a failed account log on entry on your log, it probably deserves a lot more than your casual attention. It probably means that there is some unexpected behavior happening on your Windows server, and this alert can probably help you catch this event before it becomes a significant problem for your business. So that's what the event log monitoring within the server monitoring can help you, collect in terms of monitoring. So let me just go back to the product now, and we'll just see a few of these metrics in real time. So here I am within the Applications Manager product UI, and as I was mentioned at the start of this presentation, you can see the diverse amount of technology supported within Applications Manager, within application servers, services, databases, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do now here is browse right here to the servers section and click on the Windows server. And I'm going to use this example. As you can see, I have 4 different instances of Windows Server added within my UI. And so at the very outward glance, what we see as we move into the UI, a particular application, in this case the Windows Server, is the overview. Now the overview tab can be really helpful in terms of understanding just how well your server is performing. In simple terms, it will tell you whether your server is available, healthy, and is there any cause for concern. In this case, we see there isn't any cause for concern. Everything is in green, and you can see the metrics collected here. As I was mentioning in the presentation, the CPU, the memory, the disk utilization, with the split up of each of these components. The Windows processes and the Windows service details right here. Now, the really interesting part here is the amount of convenience it adds when you imagine yourself from a server monitoring perspective. For example, you have the convenience to add or delete any process running on any of your server right here. You can add any of the services running on your server right here. You can delete them. You can choose to automate actions such as automatically restarting a particular service or stopping a particular service in case of certain problems. So that is the level of convenience that the product can offer to you and ease your efforts when it comes to monitoring your infrastructure. Some more details about the CPU. Here we see the CPU utilization by individual cores. And again, each of these metrics that we are seeing here are configurable. That is, you can configure alerts for each of these metrics individually and get alerted should the CPU user time or the system time or any of these metrics that are critical to your business, depending upon the nature of your business. You can customize them to send you alarms based upon thresholds that you might seem important. The disk utilization, right here we see the disk utilization of different drives present here, this kind of information. Now, you could do this all manually as well in case that question arises in your mind, but considering an IT setup with several hundreds of servers, hosting several hundred other applications that are necessary for business service delivery, it behoves us to employ a solution like this that minimize our manual effort in terms of pinpointing issues, diagnosing the cause of issues, and then resolving those issues. A product like this can directly pinpoint you to a problem, give you the root cause of the problem, and allow you to move on to the troubleshooting phase and help save a ton of time on the issue diagnosis phase. Here's the information about the network, that is the network interface and the network adapter if your network adapter is enabled. Now this really helps solve a critical problem that exists in IT teams, that is quite often we are at crossroads and we are not able to understand if the problem is on the network side or if the problem is on the server side, and usually there exists a long and unending blame game within the engineers and the network engineers as to where the problem is. And with information like this, you can clearly rule out the problems on the network interface side should you see all the metrics here in green, and should you see a problem here, you can pinpoint it to the network connectivity and ask the network team to diagnose or take it from there. Here are the details for the event logs. I've not enabled the event logs, but you could enable and see event logs for different monitors. Now I've added it in WMI mode. That is where you can see the event logs. If you add via the SNMP mode, you will not be able to capture the event logs. That is how the product works for now. Here are the configuration details of your server. Now this is basically just an overall information about the server configuration, and right here on the right you can see a ton of actions that you can take with respect to this particular Windows server. In case I have a particular process to add, I can add it right here. I'm accessing the demo site, so it restricts certain actions, but I can do the same from this instance here. This is an instance that is running on my machine right now, the one I'm using to conduct this webinar. And here I can show you just how to add different processes. If you see, as soon as I click the add process monitor, all the processes running on this particular instance is listed here, and I can choose from here the processes to add, and the product will start collecting metrics on the same. Similarly, the scheduled tasks, the services. So a single instance of your Windows server and all the critical components that one might need for the upkeep and health of this server, you can monitor from here and get alerted in case of downtimes. So what I'm going to do now is probably show you a quick overview about the metrics we collect for virtual machines, and then we'll go back to the product. So I've taken the Hyper-V server for an example, and let us just take a quick look at the metrics collected here. Now, if you notice the overview tab of the Hyper-V server, in the Windows server, we saw that the Windows server was healthy and available. So we didn't really have any particular issues popping up. Right here, the Hyper-V server has its health in a negative state, and we can see right from the overview tab the root cause of this particular problem and why exactly is the health of this Hyper-V instance critical. So it tells us the underlying components, the underlying services that are down, which have in turn resulted in the health of Hyper-V server being down. And here we see similar metrics that we saw for the servers, the processor detail, the system services, and the different virtual machine instances in this particular server. The memory details, network details, the network adapter, the input traffic. Then again, if there's a problem on the network side, you should be able to tell from this screen right here. Storage details and virtual storage and virtual network details. So you see the plethora of information that applications manager can collect and offer to IT admins to enable them to strengthen their server monitoring objectives. And each of this, once again, is configurable, each of these metrics. So based on the criticality, you always know which metrics to prioritize and which to stay very vigilant with. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now and continue where we left off. That is the start of the second part in today's agenda. Excuse me. That is the metrics that make up your OracleVM and KVM infrastructures. So this part is going to be a brief run, and that is because we recently introduced the OracleVM and the kernel-based virtual machine to strengthen our virtualization module. So I'm just going to take you through certain metrics that we capture, and again, the kind of information we will be able to visualize. So the CPU memory, the disk and network usage are the primary metrics that goes without saying, and the same for KVM as well, the CPU memory utilization, the network details, but then it also includes details about the storage pools and storage volume within KVM. That is the way KVM architecture is made. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the product and show you the UI of the KVM and the OracleVM monitors. Right here is the KVM listed under the virtualization module. The KVM instance, I've added one here, and you can see the details selected for this KVM instance. So beginning with the overview and the CPU, the memory, the instances of virtual machines within this, the CPU statistic, the utilization, the health, and should the health of an individual CPU be down here, you will be able to see it right here. As you can see here, the health of the KVM instance is critical, and that is because this particular service is down. The storage pool details right here, each of the volumes are listed here, and you can select and again customize these storage volumes to send you alerts or notifications should there be any problem. And the configuration tab is just a summary of the technical configuration of your KVM instance. Let us walk through the Oracle VM instance as well. Right here, there are two instances. I'm going to take this one, and then again, the health of this instance is critical. That is because a particular port is down. So you see there's a problem, and we can see from the overview tab. Now, when you see it from an aerial perspective, that is from the big picture, you will start to see real value in the product and these screens right here. For example, if I were to locate this problem right here, that is the problem with this port within my Oracle VM, I would have spent minutes or probably hours trying to find this issue, pinpoint this issue in an IT ecosystem that has probably say several hundreds of servers. But with this screen, with this kind of monitoring, I am able to pinpoint the particular service that is breaking down the performance of my Oracle VM in minutes, in seconds perhaps. So as and when you scale and you start to see real challenges with scale, the complexities of the architecture, a solution like this can really bridge the gap and mitigate the impact that a potential downtime could have caused when gone unnoticed. And this product, that is applications manager, can basically help you notice those problems in time and try to resolve those problems before they start impacting business service or dissatisfying your end users. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the presentation. And we'll see the third part of today's agenda. So we saw the various set of metrics within servers and within virtual machines and the insights that these metrics can offer us as IT admins or IT personnel. But then again, quite often the part that gets overlooked is the hardware, the very machine that hosts all your servers, all your applications. And hardware components, hardware problems, when they occur, can often be quite costly problems. And so it is just as important to spend our attention on the hardware side of things, just as we spend on the software side of things. For example, one example that we can all perhaps relate to is the extreme temperatures that sometimes our server faces, that where our hardware machine faces due to say continuously running for several days or hours, or probably processing several different transactions that the CPU has to heat up. And these can also cause a breakdown of your servers and the other applications that are hosted on these servers. So, and that might cause or interrupt your business service. So checking these aspects, for example, as you can see on your right, the different hardware metrics, the voltage supply, the status of your battery, the fan speed, whether or not your fan is even running, the CPU, processor, and all of these hardware metrics are also important when we're talking about server monitoring. And within Applications Manager, what we do is we support Dell and HP servers, but then you will need to have the Open Managed Server Administrator installed for Dell and the System Insight Manager installed for HP machines. And that's very simple and basic prerequisites. And should you have these boxes checked, Applications Manager can collect and will collect hardware metrics for your machines as well. That's about the hardware components. What we're going to do now is move to the resource planning part of the webinar. Now, the resource planning part of the webinar is the final part of this webinar, and this includes quite a lot of analytics, that is certain graphs and forecasting, and basically the kind of information that you would require to stay proactive and know when and what changes to make in terms of planning your capacity, so as to ensure that you always have the resources to process requests from users and to deliver services to your customers. Now, proactive monitoring involves carefully identifying the critical metrics for your business and and employing a robust fault management system in place. This fault management system could involve threshold-based alarms, ideally selecting the thresholds which you deem severe or critical, and then triggering alarms for the same. Now, for example, different attributes comprise different servers or different applications. In this case, let us take a simple example of, say, blocked process or the IO wait time, as you can see on your right, the different alarms. So based upon the severity or the criticality or the importance of these parameters to your organization, you can set an alarm. You can have this alarm send you an automated notification or execute your own automated actions. So what happens is, for example, let us say the disk space error that we were seeing on the server slides, right? Should you have a disk space error that requires you to go to the control panel and run a disk cleanup, you could create a script that triggers disk cleanup each time you receive a disk space error. Now, this will help you automate actions like these. And again, imagining in terms of 20, 30, or say 50 servers, these kind of manual tasks can easily be eliminated and replaced with automated actions. And similarly, say you have to restart your virtual machine or run a particular Windows service, should there be a problem, all of these actions can be automated with Applications Manager. And what I'm going to do now is take you to the UI once again, just to show you the list of actions that Applications Manager has. And these actions involve notification as well as troubleshooting actions. For example, the email and the SMS action and the trap notifications are all notification actions, while the rest are troubleshooting actions. For example, the create a new ticket action will help you automatically create a ticket on your help desk if the help desk is ServiceNow or Manage Engine Service Desk Plus. So automatic ticket creation, so your technicians are aware of the problem with the description of the problem, so they can work upon the issue at hand without having to wait on any inputs from the engineering team. And webhook REST API action, if any application that you have can communicate via APIs, you can have those alarms be seen within Applications Manager as well. So that is about the various actions we have. Going back to the product and to the resource planning part, continuing where we left off. So there are two ways that resource planning ideally should happen. One is to forecast how the resource consumption would be in the future and use this analysis to plan capacity for these based upon our forecast. But in order to understand how to forecast, what we need is historical reports about the performance parameters. So what we need is to understand hourly, daily, or weekly, and even monthly the performance parameters of our applications and use this to understand which hours of the day or which days of the week or when exactly our business faces more traffic or more requests and how to optimize our servers accordingly to process these requests and to handle this load effectively. So within Applications Manager, we have the capacity planning reports for servers and virtual machines, which will help you identify the undersized and oversized servers. And this can help you plan your capacity. If you already have enough capacity just being mismanaged, you can identify that through the capacity planning reports. Or if you do not, or if your servers are already running at full capacity and sometimes compromising on uninterrupted business service delivery, then you might probably need to upgrade your servers to handle these heavy and continuous transactions. And forecasting reports will allow you, based upon the growth trends as well as the utilization trends, as to where your performance parameters for applications will be 3 months, 4 months, or probably a year down the line. And when you put both of these together into meaningful use, you can really help save a lot of time and cost in terms of scaling your business application and scaling your business on the whole. So again, back to the product. And right here, if you are following my cursor on the reports tab, you can see the various set of reports that we have. The trend analysis report. Let me just click on a particular report. So what I'm going to see is first see at a glance report. So this basically is just an overview of the availability of this particular instance. Let us go by metrics. Yeah, just take some other instance. Yes, right here. You can see the history report, the hour of the day of the week, and even heat charts for the usage of this report. Now, this is just the trend analysis report. You can compare this report with another similar report of a similar monitor just to understand if there are two servers, which server handles more load, and again, should you decide on reconsidering your load distribution strategy. Right here, I can see for individual metrics for a particular server. So you see the level of details and the level of metrics that are captured even on the analytics front. Right here is a capacity planning report that we were talking about. Let me just take the undersized server report. And this is a clear representation of exactly what I was talking about in the presentation. So right here, you see all the different servers that are added to my product. You see how many of them are undersized based upon the CPU utilization, memory utilization, and disk utilization. And it clearly tells us that if this particular instance is undersized, why exactly is it undersized? Right here is the answer. That is, the memory utilization is clearly violating the threshold. And this is the kind of information that can really help drive those capacity planning decisions in IT setups. So all of my servers. Now you see for the 7 or 8 servers listed here, I have this information, and you would ideally need this information, need this visibility for all the 50, the 100, the several different servers that you might have based upon the size of your business. And these metrics are basically configured by you as an admin. That is, what value do you see as being critical for you to be marked in red? So that's about the capacity planning reports. Just quickly, the forecasting reports right here. Right here, you see this is the disk utilization forecast for different servers, and each of this represents an individual instance of the servers. If I scroll down, I can see the servers listed down here. So each of these servers, what is the current status of the server and what is the status going to be in the future. And as you can see here, these values are really concerning, and these values basically tell us that we need to be alert and be proactive and probably upgrade our capacity, because clearly beyond March, as you can see, these instances are going to be running out of capacity. And that can also be seen from the graph here. As you can see, the first 5 of them are clearly trending into the red zone, which is the threshold zone, and we need to be attentive to these instances. Right here, I can click on the forecast to the future, that is 3 months, probably 7 months, and each of these parts basically represent each of the instances referenced here. That's about the forecasting, the capacity planning, as well as the other features that we saw. What I'm going to do now is take you back to the presentation for one last time so we can see the audit logs. Now, this is again another type of report that we introduced into Applications Manager a few months ago. And well, audit logs has been a feature that a lot of our customers have been asking for quite a long time. And obviously, we see the value that these audit logs can offer. That is, it helps you track all the changes made. And this is equally important because Applications Manager already has a user management module built within its console, which allows you to configure various user roles from administrator to user to a manager to an operator to things like that based upon different configurations. And when you assign different configurations to different users in your organization who have access to these business applications, a lot of changes might happen on a day-to-day basis, on an hourly basis, probably a threshold change, probably a custom report generation, probably publishing a record from your business service dashboard to an external portal. So a lot of activities like these can happen, and quite often these activities can go unnoticed, and these unnoticed activities can in turn result in some problems that we might never be able to identify the root cause for. But with audit logs, every single change, every single action made within the console is tracked with the description, with the host name or IP address of the machine, of the instance where this change has taken place, by the user within the organization with access to the product as to who made the change and the change type. That is, was this change just a threshold configuration change, or was it an action and an action that was removed, or probably an action that was reconfigured. So with audit logs, the people using the product are always aware of the changes made and the personnel who made the change. So this again, this transparency can help solve a lot of communication gaps and problems arising from communication gaps. And most surveys say the most critical problems in IT are triggered by manual uh, are actually manual problems and not software or technical problems. And again, tracking activities like these can help minimize the problems occurring on those front. So I'm going to take you to the product and show you the audit logs. Right here in the admin tab, you will see several different options, but then again, we will be exploring different options through the course of this entire webinar series. So we have a lot more modules to cover, and we'll get there eventually. But for now, let us take a look at the audit logs. And here is again exactly what I was trying to tell you through the presentation. It tells us the action. It tells us the user. Clearly here, the user is the administrator who has made these changes on these different uh, hosts, and the change includes monitors managed, including child monitors, so and so. So you see exactly the change that has happened. For example, here you can see in red because it is a threshold related change, and it tells you the reason, the deleted monitors. So any change, the date and time, all of those can be captured here in the Audit Logs tab, and you can use filters to identify which business service has had a change or which particular user has made a change, or based upon a time window you can identify the changes. So again, a lot of convenience here. I'll go back to the presentation. That brings us to the end of the items we had to discuss in today's agenda. I hope you've got the things that we discussed today, and I hope the questions that you have been asking have all been answered through the chat panel. Let us quickly go through a recap of the things we saw today, and then we will be open for Q&A with my panelists. So where did we begin? We begin with trying to understand what kind of visibility we need into servers, to understand what is the operational status, just when can we ascertain that the server is healthy and available. Of course, that comes through detailed visibility into the various performance parameters. We saw certain metrics in the Oracle virtual machines and KVM virtual machines. We saw hardware problems and how these hardware problems need just as much attention as software problems, and being negligent toward hardware problems can cause significant catastrophic losses to our businesses. And then finally, we saw the different kinds of reports that Applications Manager has. Now, in case I didn't mention it before, it has over 250 different reports built in, which includes attribute-wise reports for each server instance. And then again, the trend analysis, capacity planning, as well as the machine learning-based forecasting that we have for all instances. Besides this, Applications Manager also integrates with Manage Engine Analytics Plus, which is an exclusive analytics tool. And this integration can help you create more reports, business-oriented reports, that map your revenue goals to your application performances and visualize them for the management level perspective. So that is it for today's webinar.